Welcome to the Today in History podcast, where you learn about an event that occurred today, July 19th, from history. Today's episode is titled, Seneca Falls Convention Begins. At the Wesleyan Chapel in Seneca Falls, New York, a women's rights convention, the first ever held in the United States, convenes with almost 200 women in attendance. The convention was organized by Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady St. Anton, two abolitionists who met at the 1840 World Anti-Slavery Convention in London. As women, Mott and St. Anton were barred from the convention floor, and the common indignation that this aroused in both of them was the impetus for their founding of the women's rights movement in the United States. Read more. The women's suffrage movement started with a tea party in 1848, at St. Anton's home near Seneca Falls. The two women, working with Martha Wright, Mary Ann McClintock, and Jane Hunt, sent out a call for a women's conference to be held at Seneca Falls. The announcement, published in the Seneca County Courier on July 14, read, "A convention to discuss the social, civil, and religious condition and rights of women will be held in the Wesleyan Chapel, at Seneca Falls, on Wednesday and Thursday, the 19th and 20th of July current, commencing at 10 o'clock a.m. During the first day the meeting will be exclusively for women, who are earnestly invited to attend. The public generally are invited to be present on the second day, when Lucretia Mott, of Philadelphia, and other ladies and gentlemen, will address the convention." On July 19, 200 women convened at the Wesleyan Chapel, and St. Anton read the Declaration of Sentiments and Grievances, a treatise that she had drafted over the previous few days. St. Anton's declaration was modeled closely on the Declaration of Independence, and its preamble featured the proclamation, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights." The Declaration of Sentiments and Grievances then detailed the injustices inflicted upon women in the United States and called upon U.S. women to organize and petition for their rights. Read more. Women who fought for the vote on the second day of the convention. Men were invited to attend and some 40 did, including the famous African-American abolitionist Frederick Douglass. That day, the Declaration of Sentiments and Grievances was adopted and signed by the Assembly. The convention also passed 12 resolutions, 11 unanimously, which called for specific equal rights for women. The 9th resolution, which declared it is the duty of the women of this country to secure to themselves their sacred right to the elective franchise, was the only one to meet opposition. After a lengthy debate, in which Douglass sided with St. Anton in arguing the importance of female enfranchisement, the resolution was passed. For proclaiming a women's right to vote, the Seneca Falls Convention was subjected to public ridicule, and some backers of women's rights withdrew their support. However, the resolution marked the beginning of the women's suffrage movement in America. The Seneca Falls Convention was followed 2 weeks later by an even larger meeting in Rochester, New York. Thereafter, national women's rights conventions were held annually, providing an important focus for the growing women's suffrage movement. After years of struggle, the 19th Amendment was adopted in 1920. Granting American women a constitutionally protected right to vote. Read more. Women's History Milestones, a timeline. Today's historic event is provided by History.com. You can find a link to the article in the show notes. Help support the podcast by rating us on your favorite podcatcher, or support it on Patreon by visiting patreon.com/autopod. Thanks, and tune in tomorrow for an all-new episode of Today in History.